I'd like to call the Town Council work session Wednesday, December 8th, 7 o'clock, actually 7:10. I'd first of all like to thank all of our legislators for joining us tonight in this busy time of the year. And if we could introduce ourselves, we do have name tags at the table, but if we could start with Representative Walsh and introduce ourselves, that would be great.
My name is Teresa Tanzi, and I represent District 34, which is Narragansett, the southern part of Narragansett, as well as downtown Wakefield and Peacedale.
Hi, I'm Sue Sosnowski, Senator representing South Kingstown and Block Island.
I'm Michael Rice, representative from South Kingstown and outgoing representative.
Spencer Dickinson, District 35, in South Kingstown.
Hi, I'm Representative Don Lally. I represent South Kingstown, Narragansett, and North Kingstown.
Kathleen Fogarty, Town Council.
Mary Eddy, Town Council.
Ella Whaley, Town Council.
Carol Hagan McEntee, Town Council.
Jim O'Neill, Town Council of South Kingstown.
And at this time, I'd like to thank Mr. Alford and the staff for putting together a very thorough packet, which I'm sure will enrich us all in a wonderful dialogue tonight. So welcome. And Steve, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you.
The package of information that I had forwarded by email to the legislators as well as in the council packet really was to provide for several items that are of common interest to the council and to the legislators, and to express some of the municipal concerns as far as the relationship of state budget to the municipal budget. The first item that was included in the packet was a series of, I think, 5 slides, just to be able to provide some foundation for municipal budget and relationship with the state budget. The first chart showed what the property tax cap legislation requires as far as when it was put into effect in the 2006-2007 year. The cap was at 5.5%. It moved down by a quarter point and will continue to move down by a quarter point per year until it gets down to the 4% level. So you can see on the upper bar that it's gone from the 5.5, 5.25, 5, and so forth. What I've also showing on the chart is what South Kingstown's tax levy increase has been over that same 5-year period for the cap. So we were at 5.38, 5.25, and 5. But the last 2 years, really the 2 years that have been most severely impacted by the recession and loss of state aid, what we've seen is that the council has taken particular efforts to reduce the amount of tax levy increase that's been allowed. In fact, the reductions in the raising of the tax levy has also actually reduced the municipal budget from what it was 2 years ago. So while we could have raised 4.75%, the budget was at 1.22 in the 9-10 year and at 1.54 in the 10-11 year. Being able to maintain levy growth in that level is very difficult, particularly when many of the municipal services that we provide are core or base services that we really do not have an ability to further reduce, whether that's particularly in the public safety area or in the public services area. Those are, the programs with police, EMS, as well as with the public works departments. We've cut back approximately 18 positions at this point to be able to accommodate the reductions in the overall budget. The second sheet, I think, is a more important sheet for the legislators, and this is to provide a historic perspective as to what has happened with state aid to municipalities over the 5-year term. And just a couple, I think, important facts is that all local revenues that come in, on a national basis, 27% of that comes from property tax. In Rhode Island, and this goes back 2 years ago, 52% of all local revenues are coming from the property tax. That's the 4th highest in the country, and I dare to suggest that it's going to go higher as we've seen the drastic reductions in the last 2 years. Secondly, and I'm going to quote from the Senate fiscal report that was issued in September of 2010. And by the way, if you're not familiar with the state's website, General Assembly's website, there's a great deal of resource information available, particularly for new legislators, as far as the state budget is concerned. If you go to that state website and you look at special reports, and within the special reports section, there's House fiscal reports and there's Senate fiscal reports. The year-end reports that are produced subsequent to the budget adoption provide a great deal of historical perspective that will be very helpful to you in understanding what's being brought forward to you during the legislative session. But within the introduction to the Senate fiscal report, the opening paragraph says, Rhode Island municipalities derive a majority of their revenue from property tax. In fiscal 2010, municipalities collected $2.015 billion in property taxes, which is 18% more than the personal income and sales tax in the state. So we're collecting 18% more than what the state generates from sales and income tax through property taxes on a statewide basis. That's how serious a problem we have. Data presented by the Tax Foundation indicates that the average property tax bill for a home in Rhode Island in 2008 was $3,534. And that's 86% higher than what the national average is. The national average was $1,897 in that same 2008 year. So as you can see, there's some major differences from how the nation is dealing with property taxes, which is the most regressive form of taxation, to how we've dealt with it in Rhode Island. And in fact, Rhode Island, as far as property tax paid per $1,000 worth of personal income, we rank 7th in the country at this point. So the good news may be for municipal budget preparers like Alan and I that we can't go much lower as far as the state aid is concerned. But what it's doing is it's having profound impact on the ability of people to pay property taxes. In fact, in talking with the tax collection office today, they've told me that this last quarter has been the most difficult quarter that they've dealt with in all the time that they've been there, and most of those women have worked in that office for in excess of 25 years because of late notices and delinquent payments that are being made because the November payments weren't on time. So we're seeing the impact of the recession, and it continues. When we look at the state income, general aid to the cities and towns, not using the state numbers, but when we look at just South Kingstown's numbers, you can see that we went from actually receiving $5.5 million in 2007 to what was budgeted at $2.1 million in fiscal 11. Overall, we've lost over $3 million in aid over that period of time. Now, if you look at it, there's been an erosion. First, we lost the general revenue sharing over a 2-year period. The payment in lieu of taxes, if you just run down that list, general revenue sharing, the state was originally going to give cities and towns 4.7% of combined sales and income tax. That was going to be the amount of money that would be distributed to cities and towns. It's gone down in the last several years down to about 3%. I'm on this state aid sheet first. I'm looking at the different categories. The payment in lieu of taxes, that's money that the state gives the town because of the tax exempt status of South County Hospital. That used to be 30% of what the taxable value would be. It's now down to 21%. The state library aid, that's one of the few tax transfers to the cities and towns that has remained constant. So we're continuing to see the aid there, but we also have to have a maintenance of effort. So I can't cut the library budget as a means of being able to reduce overall municipal expenditures without losing the eligibility for continuing to get general state aid for the libraries. Motor vehicle phase out, we were taking in $2.1 million in 2007. We budgeted in 2011 zero because we had no idea where that was going to be. I'm showing on the estimated column, General Assembly provided $10 million. The $10 million that they provided, we get about $161,000. So that was made in the final decisions after the municipal budget had been passed. So when we look at the next two categories where we're showing restricted aids, those are monies that come in based on capital projects that have been completed. The General Assembly has changed on the Chapter 26 school housing so that will go up to 40% reimbursement of on both principal and interest on school projects. It'll be at 30%, it's at 30% in the current year, it'll be 35% next year, and the following year it'll be up to 40%. I think hopefully that's a way of having some school systems delay construction as a means of looking to get the higher percentage reimbursement. But those are dollars that are reimbursing us for actual expenses that have already been incurred because we have to pay the debt service in the prior year. The pass-through aid is money for the Public Services Corporation tax. Public Services Corporation tax is a property tax that's collected by the state of Rhode Island, not the cities and towns. And it's for all of the Cox Communication, National Grid, the gas companies, and telecommunication companies. What the state has allowed is to have an assessment value established based on a depreciation schedule that's used for all of those tangible personal properties. And then they take it on a statewide basis, use an average statewide tax rate, and come up with the money. Unfortunately, the depreciation schedules that have been used the last several years have allowed those utilities to pay substantially less money. As an example, in 2003, there was $18 million that came out of this program statewide. As of 2011, it's down to about $10 million. And that's because an aggressive depreciation schedule has been allowed, even with the level of recommitment of infrastructure that has occurred. We've seen a marked reduction. Over the last 2 years, what the state did is they froze through the state budget and said that they would have to pay no less than they paid in the prior year. That's why there's been a stabilization. Had that not occurred, we would have continued to see reductions. I think that that is something that the General Assembly should be looking at in terms of fair share property tax payments by those utilities. And there needs to be a review made of how the depreciation schedules are employed and what the taxes are that they are paying, because that's pass-through money. They collect it on a statewide basis and then distribute that back to the communities based on where the property is located. Moving forward, just a bar chart on the next chart, just showing what the relationship was as far as the size of state aid to what it has become in 2011. There's no reason to go through that. The next page also provides additional information. What this page attempts to do is to look at what's the real cost of municipal government. When I say municipal government, I mean net out the cost of the school transfer, net out the debt service and the capital improvements. What do we have left to be able to pay for police, public services, and general administration? And as you can see, what we're looking at is about a $19 million budget that we actually spent in the 2010 year, which was about $700,000 less than what it had been in the prior year. And we're seeing the 11 budget, which is even lower than what it had been in the 2009 year. And again, you can see what the relationship is with the loss of the state aid, what that's meant to that component of the budget. Last one of the charts simply is a demonstration of what the general fund size has been, because and the reason I present this information to you is that there's an awful lot of name-calling that municipal governments aren't doing enough to be able to reduce their expenditures or to control their budgets. I think that there's a number of communities that have taken very responsible efforts, and I think South Kingstown is certainly one of those, to be able to address the concerns as far as how can we be more efficient, how can we reduce staffing where possible or personnel costs, while at the same time continuing to deliver the core services. As you can see on that chart, for the last 2 years, we're spending about $1.5 million less than what we had. And a lot of the reason that we're spending less money is that we're getting less through the state share. And one of the other misnomers that I think that's out there is that general revenue sharing is always looked at as you're giving something to the cities and towns. Well, it's our taxpayers that pay the income tax and the sales tax that's being redistributed by the state. It's not state money. It's the communities, the taxpayers' money that needs to be able to get back for them to be able to be provided with the services that they need. So that's a general explanation as to the concerns that we have with the intergovernmental relationships, fiscal relationships that we have with the state. It's important, I think, for everybody to realize that we're all on the same team and we're all supposed to be working for the same people. And I think we're going to need to have a lot more discussions as we go through the initial budget submittal, which will be probably by February 15th. I'm sure it'll be late, with the new administration coming in, and then how that's received by both chambers. But I think that we're going to have to continue to discuss what the impacts specifically will be to our community based on the spending programs that are proposed at the state level. I have also had listed at Council's request the education aid formula. I think anybody who's been involved with government over the last year recognizes that a new education aid formula was adopted. It's the first aid distribution formula for education that will be in place since 1995 in the state of Rhode Island. It's not a formula that from an administrative perspective, we believe is fair to the suburban communities. But I don't think this is the night to spend a lot of time elaborating on the education aid formula. Several things need to be done at this point. One is the Department of Education at the state level needs to get out the numbers to the communities, and I believe that should be done sometime in December. They need to get out the numbers that they're going to use as far as what the assessment year is that's going to be used, because that's a major component of the formula, as well as the student counts that are going to be used. There's two different student counts that are used. One is the total number of students within our school district and charter schools that are inhabited by children from South Kingstown. And the second number is the number of children that are on the free or reduced price lunch programs, and what those numbers mean in relationship to the rest of the state's population. Until we see that information, we will really have no idea as to the implications of the aid formula. There's also going to be problems because if the state budget is $300 million short, even if they pick up $60 million in new revenue, they've got a $240 million hole. With a $240 million hole, are they going to be able to increase aid to education as a means of being able to fully fund what the formula would require? So until we see what those numbers are, see what the cost of that implementation would be, we're not going to know what the options are that the state's going to have to look at. Obviously, one option is to fully fund the program as presented. A second would be to reduce the per pupil value that's being used, which would mean that there'd be additional reductions in what the projected aids were when the formula was put in. And the third would be that there's not sufficient money to fund the formula and that another deferment would be required, or some hybrid between that. So there's going to be an awful lot of discussions on what those implications are. And really, we could speculate, but even if you read both House fiscal and you look at Senate fiscal reports, there's still not really agreement on what the formula was and what it's going to mean in future years. We have one report that suggests through the Department of Education that South Kingstown would be losing about $265,000 a year over the next 10 years. We've had other reports upwards to $320,000. We know that as enrollments continue to decline, and we will see a decline in enrollment for the October 15th of 2010 report period, that for every student that we lose, we'll lose an equal dollar amount based on what the formula is going to give back to the communities. So the speculation could be anywhere from $300,000 to $350,000 that they would be looking at losing from what they had in the prior year. But that doesn't even take into consideration how we're going to deal with the loss of the stimulus dollars that went in there, which was about, I think, $60 million that had gone into education programming. So until we see how the new administration prepares the budget, and they're certainly working on that right now with each of the state departments, and then how the General Assembly reacts to those budgets, I think there's going to be a number of discussions that we're going to have as to what the implications are for South Kingstown. Alan and I did exhaustive work last year in terms of finding concerns with the way the formula was developed. We still have those same concerns. That's not to suggest that there's going to be any changes, but there may in fact have to be changes made so that it can accommodate, a formula can accommodate the amount of dollars that are available. But every time there's a reduction in what the education aid is going to be, there's going to be stronger pressure brought to be able to maintain education program quality onto the property taxpayer again. And then there's going to be other concerns that are going to have to be addressed pertaining to how do these systems meet the new requirements for education performance if they don't have the dollars to be able to put those things in. So you need the wisdom of Solomon to figure that out at this point. So I just think that that's what we need to be prepared to look at as we go forward. The next item that I had put into the packet at the council's request was municipal cost factors that are important, that have been discussed over the last few years, but have not been developed into legislation that was adopted by the General Assembly. And these goes back to what had been called municipal tools. I don't think that they're municipal tools as much as they are cost factors in the municipal budget. We have been supportive of legislation through the League of Cities and Towns as far as having many things taken out of labor contracts. One of those would be to establish minimum standards as far as what the percentage of health care and dental co-pays would be. One of the proposals that has had traction has been to take that out of the labor contract and require a 25% copay, which is the level of copay requirement at the federal level. The second item that's listed on the sheet relates to police officer and firefighters, OJI, injured on duty. Right now, under state law 4519-1, any police or fire officer that is injured in the line of duty receives 100% pay during the time of that injury, and of course, in addition to their medical expenses. While they're on injury on duty status, they are exempt from federal taxation and state taxation. That it's tax-free dollars. Effectively, what happens is there's no incentive to bring somebody back to work because they're really receiving a premium during the time that they're injured in excess of what their normal salary would be. Last year, 2 years ago, the General Assembly approved this same measure for state officers, but excluded municipal participation. All we're suggesting is that the same consideration that's been taken at the state level for persons injured in the line of duty should be done at the municipal level. Or probably a better thing to take under consideration and evaluate would be, why not bring police and fire under workman's comp? I believe that Rhode Island is one of 3 states that does not have workers' comp available for its police and fire. So it's something that would save us dollars if we weren't being required to provide a full pay, which actually almost provides 120% of income during the period of disability. We're not suggesting that anybody who's injured in the line of duty is not owed their full pay. What our concern is that it's more than full pay and acts as a disincentive for people to come back to work as soon as reasonably possible and medically possible. The third item that's listed there is on minimum staffing requirements. Under state statute now, collective bargaining allows for the negotiation of minimum staffing levels. Many times minimum staffing levels are not going to be agreed to across the table, and they end up being instituted through arbitration practice. Because with police and fire, there's mandatory financial binding arbitration. What that means is that the arbitrator will make financial decisions on behalf of the community and the union as to what the final contract provisions would be. That's different than with teachers and with municipal employees that do not have binding financial arbitration. They have arbitration available to them, but it's non-binding on financial issues. What we're suggesting here is that minimum staffing levels should be established by the management of each of the municipalities. They and only they know what their staffing requirements are that can fit within their budgetary needs. If we continue to have minimum staffing levels that may be higher than what we think are necessary, we have to pay additional people to be employed. We've got less dollars available to be able to provide the services. There's an imbalance there. These are management rights that need to be brought back to the municipality or management to allow us to better manage our workforce and our cost of personnel. The next item is the Public Service Corporation tax. I've already talked on that when we talked about the state aid, but there's a small write-up there that I've given you that talks about how that program has lost funding over the last several years. The next item is prejudgment interest. Tort reform is necessary. At this point, if a claim is brought against the state of Rhode Island or a municipality within Rhode Island, that case can languish before it actually goes to trial for several years. And Don certainly can speak to this issue far better than I can. But essentially, if an award is made against the municipality or against the state of Rhode Island, right now, from the date of the incident occurring and the claim being filed till the time that that is brought by the plaintiff's attorney, there's 12% interest that's accruing. What we're suggesting is that there should not be prejudgment interest. It should occur from the time that the judgment occurs. If the court says that the state of Rhode Island owes you $1 million, and the state of Rhode Island says, well, I'm going to appeal that decision and we're going to take it through court, then the interest should run during the time, from the time that the judgment was entered to the time that you actually get your money. But it shouldn't go back. It shouldn't go back to the time that the claim was filed, if in fact there's been less than due diligence on that claiming party's part to move the case through process. When you think about it, if it goes 5 years, whatever the value was of the award, if it was $1 million, you'd have $600,000 or 60% prejudgment interest required to be paid. So, again, I don't think these are things that are going to happen overnight, but they are things that I think could be looked at, because I think they would have profound impact for both the state, who's self-insured, and municipalities, even if they have insurance carriers, because it would relate to lesser premium payments that would be required. And I think it also goes down to a question of basic fairness on dealing. If somebody is injured at the expense of the state or the town, and they're entitled to an award, that's fine. But if they haven't brought the case forward on a timely basis, we shouldn't be paying that 12% interest, and neither should the state. There's one other item that we did not get on this list, and I apologize for that, but the Council and School Committee last year did pass resolutions that were sent to members of the General Assembly in opposition to binding arbitration. And I think that that issue is going to be front and center again with organized labor's proposals that will be coming forward. And I think that it's one that I certainly will be advocating for the council to send messages to you in opposition to that, both for binding arbitration for teachers or for municipal employees. So those are legislative issues that we see that affects the municipality, that we wanted to provide some base information for to you. The last item on legislative changes that have been proposed is I gave you a memo from Dale, and I'm sure she can speak to the issue better than I can, but there's 2 items that she's suggesting should be considered. One is to attempt to close the polls at 8 o'clock at night rather than 9 o'clock at night. And Rhode Island is one of 3 states nationwide that have the polls open till 9 o'clock at this point. It's not so much that we want the polls closed at 9. The problem is for the poll worker that starts at 6 o'clock in the morning. And if the polls are open till 9, by the time we get the polls closed and we get them out of there, we've got people that have been out straight, in some cases, 16 to 17 hours. It makes it much more difficult for us to be able to recruit people that are willing to make that type of a full-day commitment. And in some cases, we don't feel that, if they're sitting there for that last hour with few voters coming through, and the voters knew that they closed at 8, we're not sure that that's going to take away anybody's right to be able to get to the polls on a timely basis. The second item that Dale mentions in the memo, which is equally important and maybe somewhat unique to South Kingstown, is that right now state law requires that a polling place can't have more than 1,900 registered voters assigned to that polling place. And Dale gives the illustration of what took place in the last election and the primary, with us having the poll at URI. Within that, within the polling place at URI, there's 1,730 registered voters. However, we only had 138 people vote. And what we're suggesting is that if the law were changed, those type of special place circumstances could allow us to be able to merge polling places, not have to get as big a staff as we have to get. It would reduce our cost of election, and it still would provide a viable mechanism for people to properly be able to cast their vote. I'm not sure that, that there's a lot of polling places that are going to have that type. What our problem is there is that the kids are registered to vote from URI. They're not voting in those elections, or what's happened is they did vote in a prior election, but they're now in some other state because they've graduated, and we can't take them off the voting list. Is it 2 years, Dale?
Two federal elections, so it would be 4 years. We can't remove them from the list. So unless they notify us that they have moved or left the state or whatever, they remain on that list for 2 federal elections.
So again, these aren't direct things. What we're asking is that you at least take a look at these items, and there may be reasons that folks upstate feel that this is not an appropriate solution, but we think that they at least are something that you should understand from a municipal perspective that we would have concerns with. The next item that we wanted to provide an update is, on an annual basis, I give the council an update as to our relationship with state DOT, the different projects that are ongoing. We have a good, in fact, I think South Kingstown has a very good relationship with the Department of Transportation. And we keep this type of an open items list as a means of being able to keep up on projects so that if they start to fall through the cracks, we can get them back online. I wanted each of the legislators to also have a copy of it so that when you're dealing with DOT, you know what projects we are dealing with and what the time schedules are that they're supposed to be on, so that if they go awry, we can start to ask questions on that. The other thing, too, is I think that these are also probably projects that you will have constituent calls on, and at least you'll have some idea as to where those projects are at any given time. I think the more important projects at this point, 138 reconstruction, it is certainly moving slowly. I think I was a college student when we started talking about that. And I think my grandson will be in college before we see the reconstruction occur, but we're getting close. We're up to a 75% design concept. DOT has been hurt somewhat in terms of new drainage standards that are being thrown at them at this point, which are going to require additional work to be done. One thing that's not included in the 138 reconstruction that really is going to be important to us that we need to get on the radar is the 138 overpass for Amtrak. That bridge is not included in any of the design plans. That bridge will have to be an entire separate project. As anybody who travels that road knows, that is a dangerous component of that road now, and it's not scheduled in any design plans at this point to be updated, as far as either the bridge itself, because there's a great deal of utility work that's associated with that bridge, and we are going to need to try to get that onto a DOT schedule so that it can be in planning and design. Because the intersection with Fairgrounds Road is not a good setup at this point, and that whole area there needs to be reset for better access into the train station, as well as the access on the other side of the road to Fairgrounds. But a lot of people have thought that that is being included in the 138 reconstruction. It is not. The other thing that we're still waiting to get final design plans is the roundabout that would be at Ministerial Road. I don't see that as a big of an issue. The choke point on Ministerial Road roundabout, though, is the bridge over the at Sue's property. That is the narrowness of that bridge prevents really a right turn lane from being developed to be able to move traffic that's trying to get to 110 on the eastbound lanes. And with the increased traffic that we have with Plains Road and the Ryan Center, that intersection's really going to be something that works better than it does right now. So we've got two points: the railroad bridge and really the stream crossing at 110, which are problem areas that aren't going to be resolved based on the 138 design plan that's in place today. I do want to touch on High Street. High Street was last reconstructed. Let me back up. It's not reconstructed. When we installed sewers in 1977, we paved High Street as a component of that construction project. There has been no work done on the sidewalks that I'm aware of, probably since the WPA. At this point, we have had High Street in planning and design for probably 15 years. It can't go forward because the planning and design itself has got elaborate drainage changes that would be necessary if they were going to do a 3R, a total reconstruction of that road. What we have talked with the design engineers is a one-R project. A one-R project would be to take the road totally out, sidewalks, and to replace all the sidewalks, replace the road, and to reline the existing drainage pipes that are there, and to set new drainage catch basins that are there, so that we wouldn't be increasing flows, but rather would be making sure that some of the corrugated pipe, which is rotted out, is sleeved so that it would still be able to carry the water that it once carried without interruption. We think that, I've talked with Bob Smith, who's the chief of design. Bob has indicated that he's going to come down to sit with us to talk about that type of a one-hour project. Would I like to have the road reconstructed with a brand-new drainage system put in? Yes, but if it's going to take another 25 years, that road can't handle the traffic that it has today. Even with a small rainstorm, it floods out. So what we're looking to do is to get that road onto a expedited list while DOT has some money available to do that type of a redevelopment, and that would take us all the way to the Peacedale Rotary. But that road needs to be reconstructed at this point. As I say, when Bob Smith was down with us, we made sure that we brought him down on a rainy day, and and he certainly was convinced by the time he was done that the state can't leave that road alone. But that's a hot button, I think, for the legislators, if you're dealing with DOT, to keep High Street up front. We also have, make sure you're aware of it, a commitment from the state for a spring repaving of Route 1 from the Narragansett Town Line to Jerry Brown. That's really the worst stretch that we have at this point. From Jerry Brown out to Green Hill, that was paved about 3 years after the section that will be repaved. We also have a project right now which is supposed to be done, I believe, in the spring, or started in the spring, which is a diet reconstruction, they're calling it, on Dale Collier Corner, in terms of they will end up providing one eastbound lane going onto Main Street. There'll be you'll have a dedicated green arrow in both directions so that there's not the conflict on 108 coming through that intersection. We do have some concerns. They're identified in the memorandum itself. They're still allowing, I think really because they don't want resistance, we really think that Cuevadas needs to be captured in terms of the access points there. It's too wide, it's not pedestrian friendly. You can't have a driveway cut as wide as you have it at Cuevadas without it interfering with safe travel for the pedestrians in that area. If that traffic is channeled through there with a proper road cut, we think it would be a much safer situation. So there's still several points that we need to work with on that. Again, it's not a case of us not getting the cooperation, it's really a case of the volume of work that they have to do statewide on how long it takes to get some of these things through. And we also wanted to mention that intermodal facility is under design by the state. They took the design that we had completed, they're updating that design. They will be paying, with 3 different grants, 100% of the cost of building the intermodal facility. They also will be, they've already awarded the contract for Phase 3 bike path, and a component of that is the paving of the parking lot at Teeny's. So, I mean, we've got a lot of positive things going with DOT. We just need to get the actual construction work into place. The next item that I had for you is and I think you'll get calls on this, is we received word the day before Thanksgiving that the state is going to demolish the East Matunic Beach Pavilion and construct a brand-new beach pavilion. I had Andy put a memo together that you've got a copy of. There's a lot of detail in there as far as the project is concerned. My staff has a meeting, and I'll be meeting with DEM people. I think it's next Wednesday, the 15th, if the 15th is a Wednesday, to go over some of the concerns that we have, that we want to review the plans. We're a little bit disappointed in not having any municipal notification on the project until they've got a design completed. I'm also somewhat concerned that we weren't involved in the construction scheduling, because I'm not sure if a better construction schedule would have been a fall demolition and a spring construction with less work going on during the summer months. We're concerned, we want to see what the traffic flows will be, as well as the parking availability. That beach is heavily used. That beach parking lot fills up, and the problem that we have there is when the parking lot fills up and somebody's driven from Providence to go to the beach, they're not going to leave. They're going to sit in queue on Succotash Road, and it sometimes blocks traffic. One of the concerns we have as well is that DEM is suggesting that they want to put a LED sign on Route 1 to tell people when the lot's full. Well, I don't think that that type of a signage on Route 1 is appropriate for the area. I also think that if the sign says lot is full, just as the sign that's out there now, people are still going to go down there. So the real question is, how do you cue the traffic, and how do you prevent the traffic from backing up on the travelway itself? One of the other proposals here is that this would be an energy-efficient building, and it would also have a wind turbine. We need to know where the location of the turbine is and whether that impacts critical habitat areas for the piping plovers, whether it impacts the areas associated with parking today that may not be able to be used for parking if that's in place. Hopefully, none of these things are issues that'll be problems, but what I'm suggesting to you is that these are things that you're going to hear about as this project moves forward. We're trying to give you the background information, so when you speak with DEM, you'll have the same level of information that the town officials have. We also gave you a copy of the building design, that the rendering. That's the only document that we've seen to date. I will also note that the permit has been issued by Coastal on this project. The permit was submitted on September 20th, and it was the permit was issued on September 20th, and the application was submitted on September 16th. So Coastal Resources is a very efficient organization. So, but that's the information that I think that you'll need in terms of questions that you may have on the project. One other thing is, this ends up being another loss in state aid to the town, because we receive a percentage of the fees that are collected at that beach. So if only one parking lot is available, there'll be less revenue that'll come in to offset some of the costs that we incur in terms of police patrols in that area during the summer months. The next item involves really just providing the legislators with a planning document on Matunic drainage issues, coastal erosion issues. This issue is one that is very, very important to the community from a public safety standpoint. I had Ray Nickerson prepare a status memo on the coastal damages, and as Ray is noting, we are seeing further erosion with the storms that we've had over the last couple of months. Actually, I jumped over one. That's why you're looking for it. I jumped over TMDLs. Can I ask, Shockey, can you come up? John Shock is the town's Director of Public Services and deals with DEM on a number of issues. And I think what we've given you is a map. Why don't you come over here for that mic? We've given you a map which gives you the what's total maximum daily loads. We have 6 different projects that DEM has defined as being required for us to take direct actions to be able to reduce different pollutions within different water bodies and basins within the community, and they're identified on that map. The biggest issue that we're running into with DEM at this point is that we're seeing regulatory mandates that could have profound financial impact on the town. The 6 items that we have here, if we were to take the steps that would be necessary to meet the levels, to take out the bacteria, the coliform at these different locations, we would be talking probably in excess of $15 to $20 million. And what we're looking at is whether or not the TMDLs that have been established and total maximum daily loads of different pollutions that are allowed for a water body to be drinkable or swimmable. To be able to meet these standards, we think is impossible. And the reason that I say that is that one of the things the DEM hasn't taken into consideration are those things that are not man-made. Most of the bacterial contamination, or coliform bacteria, fecal bacteria, is related to waterfowl as well as wildlife. And those materials, the waste materials, being washed into the water bodies with any type of a rain event. The DEM requirements at this point say the bacteria exists, it's now the town's responsibility to remove it. The man-made problems associated with closed drainage systems that are also going to carry fecal material, and the fecal material again could be from wildlife or from waterfowl, are something that we would have responsibility for. But if we're not going to start from a starting point of before man inhabited South Kingstown, what was the level of bacterial contamination that was naturally occurring because of the habitat, and we're going to now suggest that the town's responsible for cleaning that material out of there without us having any control over the wildlife or the birds, it seems programmatic. We can make physical improvements, spend $20 million, and then do a retesting and find out that we still have the bacterial contamination because we haven't got rid of the birds, we haven't got rid of the wildlife. One of the things we're most proud of in the town is that we've protected an awful lot of land from development, and it serves as habitat for wildlife and for migrating birds. Unfortunately, a lot of the birds have figured out they like it around here and they don't leave for the winter as they used to. But we've got a situation where we would never be able to meet what the requirements are within the documentation that's been prepared by DEM. We spent $145,000 last year on an engineering and review study that questions really the basic science that was employed by DEM. And with that as a general introduction, let me let John put it into more of the difficulty in terms of dealing with this type of program.
Yeah, I think the manager has pretty much captured, my concerns, and that, I question some of the science that the state has used to develop these 6 TMDLs, particularly with regard to the fecal coliform. It really is from our review and our consultants' review, non-attainable. They're looking for reductions in Green Hill Pond, for example, the Narrow River and Saugatucket River Basin, upwards of 80 or 90%, where their own studies have identified waterfowl and wildlife as one of the primary sources. The anthropogenic, which is human and pet waste or domesticated animals, those are things we can deal with, and we are now. The center part of town is sewered, and we have our on-site wastewater management program to deal with those people with on-site wastewater disposal. But the wildlife and waterfowl contributions, short of dealing with the source, is we're not going to see those reductions. And if we go through the recommended strategy that the state is looking for us to do by doing outfall treatments, once we're done, we again have to, it's an iterative process. We're going to have to go back and resample, and if we find fecal coliform and other outfalls, they're expecting us to continue and do more treatment. So I think at this point in time, what we're doing is we're doing everything we can we're trying to finish up our public education element, trying to get the word out for proper pet waste disposal. We're going to be approaching the farmers in town as far as manure management, proper, keeping the cows out of streams and that sort of thing. Sure.
On this. I think Representative Walsh and I had worked on this issue with Steve years ago, and we had sent a letter out to Mike Sullivan, and maybe Donna has been more onto this than I have. I haven't received anything from, Kathy Fogarty had mentioned something about it during the election, but this is the first that I've realized it's gone to this size and scope. And to my recollection, when we had received a letter from Mike Sullivan, he had said that they weren't going to be enforcing this. Do you remember that, Donna, that it was going to be a recommendation? That was a while ago. But, we haven't heard anything, and now we've gone to this stage. I mean, I'm a little alarmed by it, to tell you the truth. And, why these particular areas of town? There's probably more cows up in the Chickasha than there is down this area. I mean, there's a lot of information that I'd really like to have from DEM on this. I'm a bit alarmed by it, that they're expecting the town, and I don't have any figures in front of me. I don't know what they're trying to make the town achieve. It sounds to me like you're saying it's impossible.
What I can say is that
it's unreal. I mean, it's
DEM has found us in significant noncompliance, and they're waiting for our TMDL implementation.
Which requires a
Schedule.
physical alterations, which means drainage installations. It could mean any number of dollars being spent on Indian Run. You mentioned the phosphate at Yagu.
Giving you the funding for this. I mean, they expect the
The
town.
only thing they're going to tell you that's available is that there's loans available and grants that are available at 15%. And so, I mean, Yagu is a classic example. The problem was the
Harbor shellfish.
harbor shellfish, which now impacts South Kingstown waters, but it's South Kingstown's problem because the waters are in South Kingstown.
They've given you a time frame on this?
Well, again, they're waiting at this point, and this is what the study was that the town authorized, which is just in draft form. We're trying to finish that up. But the state is looking for an implementation schedule from the town. So once we respond to that, DEM, I think, has a couple choices. Either they agree with it, which I don't think they're going to, or they're going to say the implementation schedule is non-responsive. And at that point, they could take an enforcement action against us.
I mean, we've sent letters to the director, and we've been advised that the DEM will work with us. But it's also interesting that we have 6 defined TMDLs. These go back all the way to, I think the first one was
2001.
2001. I think we have more TMDLs identified under the EPA standards than any other town probably in the country.
We have 6, and that was, one of the consultants told us that we are, I think South Burlington, Vermont's the other one, but we're like the, I'll use those words, epicenter of TMDLs in the nation.
Probably with South Burlington, Vermont, it's because they do have a lot of cows, but, I mean, that's not the case in South Kingstown. I mean,
Well, what we would like to do is to have, a work meeting with the legislators that would want to get more of the information. There's a lot of information that we can provide to you. We have updated the council on this. We're not looking to fight with DEM. We're looking for cooperation, but we also think that the science is such that if the expectation is that you're going to get rid of coliform, fecal bacteria in these water bodies, without getting rid of the animals and without getting rid of the birds that sit on that water, it just doesn't make any sense. And what also doesn't make sense is that this is going to have profound impact on business development in areas that are impacted, because those businesses will not be able to, they would be required to contribute to the cost of these facilities. And what's going to happen is people will not reconstruct buildings if, because of the amount of surface parking that they have that feeds into a state drainage system, that they're going to have to allocate dollars for that type of work. So it has more impact than just on the municipalities. Going further, though, when I said earlier that we've got regulatory mandates that are coming in, the state also has, and in fact, they've just finished a new stormwater design manual. I think it's 280 pages long.
480.
480 pages
I was going
long.
to say, 280 sounds very modest.
And-
Very realistic.
But understand that at a time when we're being required to cut back municipal services, because we don't have the bucks and you don't have the bucks to give us, some of the things that are being required is that we're going to have to do street sweeping more than once a year. Well, to do that means you have to have the personnel. You're going to need to clean catch basins more than once a year. You're going to, so what happens is the workload that we're seeing that's being required because of these edicts that come out from the state, where there is no fiscal impact that's been noted, creates real difficulty for us. And if we're a community that's going to ignore everything and say, well, come fine us and come fine us in contempt, that's one thing. We've never done that. What our objective is to be in compliance with the rules and regulations that are out there. But it's becoming literally impossible to be able to deal with the regulatory mandates that continue to come out of the drainage programs that the state is requiring. And understand that there's layer after layer after layer. We're dealing with, what is it, the MS4, which is the storm-separated sewer requirements. We have to have an outfall permit with the sewer plant. All of these are contingent on one another. So if you're not in compliance, you're not going to be able to move to the next step. So we're trying, but what we're looking at is that the cost of being able to do this, in fact, I'm sure you've noticed around town, any place you see a catch basin, there's a number now. We had to geocode all of those, map those, and now we have to show on a regular schedule when they're cleaned. Now,
And sample, we have to sample
and we have to sample them.
twice a year.
So, I mean, there's a lot that's going on that I don't think the General Assembly is seeing themselves in terms of what's going on. And then you get a fiscal note that says indeterminate.
Well, I definitely would be interested in meeting with you and DEM on this, because I'd like to see what figures they are using, what kind of standards they're using, where did they arrive at that science? Is that what is going on in other states with similar topography? Especially with South Kingstown, we're way ahead of a lot of the towns as far as the cesspool phase-out program and so forth and so on. So I definitely would be very interested in working with you and the council on this and finding out,
Excuse me. I think Councilwoman Fogarty was next.
I was just going to say, talking about the testing, John, and Sue was interested in that just to give us a little bit of info on how they tested some of the waters, because I think people will find this quite interesting.
Right, we have to go out, we're required by our permit to go out spring and fall, fall being dry weather, wet weather period, spring being the wet weather period. And we have to go look at every single outfall. We've got 300 and some outfalls in town. If there's flow, we have to take a sample. The flow's got to be, it used to be just be tested for pH, conductivity, temperature, and fecal. Now we also have to analyze it for odor, visual inspection. There's a whole, I think there's, now it went from 4, I believe there's 16 different parameters we have to either sample for or inspect. And that all has to be reported each year on our annual report. And the interesting thing is the state has indicated that we don't have to do that sampling in areas that are sewered. And, you know, we're going to continue to do it in the areas that are sewered because I need, in fact, we may take the extra step in trying to analyze the fecal to do DNA analysis to see if it's anthropogenic or non-anthropogenic. So, you know, I have, again, I like to focus in on making sure the science is correct, and I have a lot of reservations that the TMDLs were not based upon generally accepted scientific principles, which translates into a big number for us if we move forward and do what the state is asking us to do.
John, was some of this data collected from students?
I'm sorry?
Was some collected from students?
Well, I mean,
some of
you
the
know,
science?
so, I mean, in that, you know, I was concerned, you know, something as simple as the chain of custody, you know, was proper chain of custody followed, what testing method? And, you know, a lot of it was done by volunteers, and I'm not saying the volunteers aren't well-intended, but when it turns into consequences of, you know, upwards of $12 or $15 million, I want to make sure that the science and the sampling and the testing methods were done in accordance with generally accepted standards to make sure that that information's accurate. And I don't have a real high level of confidence that it is in all cases.
Representative Rice?
No, I commend you in terms of going down this pathway, because I think that that is the keystone of to this entire thing. In my humble opinion, the science is sitting on essentially a major house of cards. The coliform and fecal coliform tests that are standardly used for water quality analysis were first developed in 1890. They were extremely good around the turn of the 20th century to wipe out such things as cholera, typhoid fever, and the like. However, sort of coming on down the line and sort of pushing their usefulness in terms of even calculating within some sort of specificity what a total daily load should be based on those numbers, when each of those is sort of a statistical number in and of itself, is rather dicey business all the way along. So there is, as you pointed out, newer methods to basically get and quantify the coliform bacteria and identify each colony in terms of where it is coming, whether it is sort of animal and the like. But nobody does that because it's rather expensive. So, I would argue that the economics of spending the money on the science would probably be a lot more wise first before going down the pathway of implementing on a house of cards. And I think you can make that argument pretty well.
If we do proceed in that manner, we would still have to, again, get the state to amend the TMDLs to allow for the natural background, you know, waterfowl and wildlife level.
Their amendment would also require EPA's approval. So, I mean, we're not going to solve that problem tonight, but we wanted to make sure that you're aware of the problem, and we'd certainly like to discuss it at further length, because we really think that this is something that needs to be discussed from the head of DEM on down.
Representative Rice?
And just as a ironic sidebar note, I'll be climbing on a plane to Banjul in the Gambia to help the Gambians set up their water quality management on this line.
Good.
Any further comments from legislators, town council on this issue?
No.
Thank you, John.
Back on the coastal zone, I think, I've given you the memo, and I don't want to go into any detail on the memo. I think the most important thing is that the town has been diligently trying to come up with solutions, because our concern is that we will lose Matunic Beach Road. And if we lose it, we lose access to all of the homes that would be south or east of where that breach would occur. The amount of erosion that's occurring on the town beach, we'll deal with that. On the town beach, we've lost some of our walkways. In fact, we've got a meeting tomorrow because some of the existing walkways are undermined at this point. But the real critical component is where the two restaurants are, where we've got such severe erosion that in some cases we're within 20 feet of the road. What I would ask more than anything else is to determine how coastal resources can become an advocate for the community rather than a regulator of the community. And when I say that, I would think that the responsibility of the agency should be the protection and preservation of the coastline. And the erosion that's occurring at this point can have profound impact on the state, or at least our municipality, if it continues unabated. We've had several meetings, as diaried in the memorandum, with both the coastal staff and with our federal legislators in an attempt to determine whether there's any type of federal assistance that's available. Looking for a long-term solution seemed like a good idea 5 years ago. Looking at today, I think that an interim solution has to be had. For some way for us to come up with an interim solution to abate or to abate the existing erosion, the continuation of the erosion. There are interim measures that have been taken around the world to be able to slow down or stop coastal erosion. It may not fit within the coastal definitions of their regulations, but I think we've got to come up with some type of a solution of an interim nature that will stop the continued erosion that's occurring until we can come up with a permanent solution. You know, we did an engineering study, we did a pre-hazard mitigation study, we've looked at different measures. The engineers have come back with the real solution should be to build a seawall similar to what's in Narragansett. Backfill behind that, be able to create public land that could be used as a walking path that would take you to Deep Hole. These are wonderful ideas, but they're not ideas that are going to be effectuated within the time period that we have before that road's going to be impacted. I'm recommending to the council in this memorandum, as you saw, that we secure the services of a marine engineering firm to look at interim solutions. There are, underwater stabilizers that have been tried in some areas as a way of taking away some of the wave energy, as a means of slowing down the rate of erosion. If these can be done on an experimental basis, in conjunction with coastal, rather than coastal serving as a regulator for us to have to put the plan together, then submit it, and then have them react to it, but rather for them to work hand in hand with us on it, I think we could come up with a more viable and expedited solution. And I would think that that should be what this type of an agency would want to do. Unfortunately, by doing nothing, we've made a decision. We're just continuing to see the erosion, and we're going to see that road undermined it could even be this, within a year. So the interim solutions are necessary. We're going to need your assistance to get Coastal to act other than a regulator, but rather as an initiator of ideas to assist us in dealing with this type of an issue. I can go into any level of detail. I don't think there's a need for it. I think the documentation speaks for itself. If any of the legislators need a copy of the full report that we prepared earlier this year, which provides chapter and verse on the level of erosion, the history since 1938, we can provide you with that. But the key at this point is, what do we do on an interim base that will slow down the rate of erosion? And are there temporary measures that can be taken? I don't want to hear that if you put a stabilizer in the water, which is really nothing more than a sausage tube filled with concrete, that's put on an angle so that that as the wave comes in and goes back out, it retains a lot of the sand. I don't want to hear that that's a physical structure, so there has to be a full environmental report prepared on it. I want to know, why can't we do this on an experimental basis with the cooperation and probably financial assistance of property owners that are involved, so that we, one, protect the road, and we also provide an opportunity for businesses that have been located there for many, many years to be able to continue to be located there. If the solution is to allow those businesses to fall into the water, we still don't have a solution on what's going to protect that road. So we need common sense, and we need a common working effort with the private property owners, the municipality, and the state, whether that's the state vis-a-vis coastal or DEM. We need to come up with some type of solutions that don't look back to the Red Book that was prepared, I think, in 1976 for the solutions. We've given you the definition of what, that area of Matunic is currently defined as a, as a bluff. It's not a man-made beach. You can't make structural changes. All of these things need to be redefined. Or we have to come up with a common path for dealing with the problem before it becomes insurmountable. The thing that I keep saying to Coastal is, if you lose Matunic Beach Road, where does the water then go? Is it going to then breach into Potter's Pond? Is that going to impact the water quality within Potter's Pond as far as its salinity level? What about the homes from Prospect Street that would then be destroyed? So all of these things, I think that there needs to be a common sense approach taken, rather than these are what our regulations are. And I'm not sure how we're going to affect that, but if the council gives us authorization to go forward, we'll have a marine engineer looking at interim solutions rather than the long-term final solution. We'll then hopefully be able to deal with Coastal and say, can we do these on an experimental basis, come up with what the probable cost will be, and then try to find where the funding's going to come from on that. But without some type of an effort that has some commonality of interest between the state agency, the municipality, and the private property owners, we're not going to get anywhere. So that's an issue that I'm sure we're going to have to talk about several times over the next year. Those were all the items that council had asked me to prepare background information for you on. I know that there's other items that the council wants to deal with. Ella, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Steve. Brings us to item 8 on the agenda, other matters of mutual interest. I know that I had a prior conversation with Senator Sosnowski, so I'm not sure if at this time you'd like to give us an update on the NOAA regulations and what's happening with our farms.
I really can't give you any update on the NOAA regulations, other than there's a lot going on. I've spoken with Senator Whitehouse. They have also noted their objections to NOAA as far as the catch share regulations, and have asked for slowing down of the process, and also the reopening of the Magnuson-Stevenson Act. On that note, we do have a special Senate task force on the fisheries that met this week on Monday, which was very well attended by Just about, every representation of the fisheries in Rhode Island, from the saltwater anglers to the commercial fishermen's different alliances and groups, talking about the current status and trends of fishing in Rhode Island today. So we plan on meeting at least 4 or 5 more times on that and delving further into the regulatory arena on the fisheries, and then make recommendations to our federal delegation on how we can go forward on that,
Thank you.
in a nutshell.
Thank you. Did you want to talk about anything new with the farms?
Also, there is federal legislation that is pending. Now it's just been passed, the Senate bill has just been passed with an amendment. This is the Food Safety Act. I'm not saying the full title correctly, but basically it would allow for more stringent handling of food prior to being sold to the public. And the bill had passed last year in the House and Congress, and it passed over to the Senate. In its form, it would not help local agriculture at all. It would subject all the local growers and the farmers markets to the same type of stringent standards that large corporations have to deal with. And as we know, we don't want to diminish the sale of local produce, not only in Rhode Island, but across the country. But after consultation with Senator Whitehouse, he informed me of an amendment to the bill, which the bill would not affect agricultural businesses making $500,000 a year or under. So it looks, that amendment has passed the Senate, and now it is going to conference committee for the House of Representatives to go over that. So I have sent letters to the congressional delegation on that, hoping that they will pass it with the amendment intact. If it were up to me, I'd like not to see the legislation at all, but I don't think that's going to happen, because there's been enough cases of contamination across the country that Congress is very concerned about, and USDA and FDA are very worried about. So I'm very glad that the amended language has been passed by the Senate.
Thank you. And did any other town council or legislator have another matter of mutual interest and concern? Alan?
Oh, I just want to go back to the school budget to let you folks know what South Kingston schools are going to be faced with, because one of the things we didn't talk about was that there's going to be a significant increase in the retirement percentage as far as the contribution that the school department has to make. In the current year, that's 11.25%. Next year, it goes to 14.89%. So altogether, it's around a $750,000 structural change that will be there. In addition to that, Steve mentioned the loss of the federal stimulus. That's around $256,000. You have the education funding formula. If that's implemented, $260,000, that's a minimum amount. And then in addition to that, they're talking on the state level, as far as with the $300 million deficit, that there could be a 5 to 8% cut in education aid. So that's probably around another $400,000 at best case, $600,000 at worst case. So you're talking a structural deficit of around $1.7 to $1.9 million before you even look at health care, salary increases, if there are any. It is a negotiation year. You also have out-of-district tuition increases, potential, charter school increases, utility increases. So there's a lot of other things in that budget that will go up, and so they're faced with a pretty monumental task from the get-go.
Does anyone have any other concerns they'd like to bring up? Jim?
Yeah, I guess Alan just took all the numbers away from me. I was prepared to. Matter of fact, we're right on the money. We're absolutely even. And those are our concerns. Those are my concerns specifically, but I think the council and the school committee are going to have to address some major challenges this year. And Alan did not mention things like your workers this year. The TDI just announced going up 10% for all the 400,000 workers in this state beginning in January. It's $100, not a lot of money, but it means a lot. Your motor vehicle excise tax increase in South Kingstown for the average home last year was up 4%. That's continuing. And those are areas that really affect the poor, farmers who have a lot of registered vehicles, small business. They're being clobbered. And I see no sensitivity at all coming from the General Assembly. On top of that, Alan mentioned the pension increase. If you add the town in there too, we probably close in on $950,000 to $1 million of new pension money that's needed. You read about in the paper the other day, I guess I calculated close to $55 million of deferred state salaries. You probably saw $36 million, longevity, another $9 million. You add the pension, the 22% number needed on the pensions, another $10 million. That's a $55 million surprise of the deferred salary increases to pass last year's phantom budget. I know you have to do things. But I've really got some grave concerns with the pension issues because I keep going back 10 years ago. You can almost measure it. 10 years ago, $1 out of every $1 out of every $15 that the state raised in revenues went towards pensions. This year, we're just shy of $400 million with the new Treasurer's report, $400 million out of a $2.8 to $3 billion budget, $1 out of $7.50. Do you see that momentum in this? This is overwhelming. Hurting our kids, hurting education, hurting open space, hurting things that we need to do in our community. We are being clobbered with the pension situation the way it is. And I really believe that the first thing you've got to do in office is address the structural deficits that are really being caused by the pension areas in the state. And there's a way to do it. I'm going to plead with you. Love to ask your pledge for it. I'm going to plead with you not to do what I'm panicked that Governor-elect Chafee may do. I don't want to see us re-amortize the debt in the pension area. Adding another 10 years, $2.4 billion would be added over another 10 years. Are you trying to just kill our state? You can't even think along those lines. You'll send every college graduate out of this community. Who is going to stay in this state to kind of cover that kind of long-term costs? Who would do that to their children or grandchildren? Maddening, just anyone thinking about it. I really need you to think that you need to tell the governor-elect that that's not on anybody's plate and won't happen. He's also wanting to throw a 1% tax on what I consider, again, necessities for the poor. He says he can raise $100 million. I hope you just absolutely damn that before it begins. You cannot ask for any more money from taxpayers after the motor vehicle issue and after you see the demise here of a lot of other situations that are revenue raisings. You cannot ask for more taxes. Even Washington at this point is stimulating economies. We may not like it, extending tax cuts. Last thing they're going to do is raise money from taxes. You cannot entertain that 1% increase. You cannot entertain any increase. It's spending that you can control, and that is it. That's what you must address. A couple things for Sue while we're at it. Sue, has the University of Rhode Island here, I always carry around with me Brown University and Roger Williams University walking some of our favorite dairy cows around their campus, of which they have made huge purchases of Rhody milk. Has the University of Rhode Island joined this through their procurement practices, or are we still the only college in this state that is not buying Rhody milk?
Oh, they haven't bought Rhody milk yet, and I think if a town council resolution asking URI to jump on board would be very, very good. I've been trying to work with them for quite some time, and they seem quite hesitant to jump on board. So any help that the council could give in that regard, and I'm sorry to speak without being called upon,
Oh,
Madam
that's
President.
beautiful, thank you.
Yeah, I will certainly do that, but I mean, here I've got these beautiful pictures of these bovines being cows, being marched across the campuses up there with huge buying that they've done. Here's one of our major industries in this state. And our state universities are a procurement problem for the smallest, probably, cost issues. Imagine if we start doing with our fish, clam chowders, oyster chowders. I mean, are we just going to fence our farmers out and fishermen out? And going to fishermen for a second, I just had a chance to read this article the other day on the demise of Rhode Island's pollock in New England. There seems to be a borderline north of Cape Cod. The pollock is doing fine. South, there's no more pollock. But the National Marine Fisheries Group is now saying that it's a healthy stock and rebuilt. What is happening here? Who is not working together? And why is all the funding for these fishery councils done through Gloucester, and why don't we have someone here in either New Bedford, Point Judith, somewhere like that? If you can help me out. I'm just learning all about this, but this really has me quite bothered. And I know you are too.
Yeah, well,
Senator Sosnowski.
a lot of you share a lot of my frustration, Jim, on this. A lot of regulations are federal, and there's various councils. Starts with NOAA, and then you have the councils. You have the New England Marine Fisheries Service, who has regulatory authority. Then you have the New England Council. Then you have the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, who also has regulatory authority. And they really govern what the states are doing, Atlantic States and NOAA, from Maine to North Carolina. And then when each one of the states, departments of environmental management in our case, has to really, they are the local arm of the federal law. When I served on the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission for 3 years, I had such a frustration because when you start to learn of the bureaucracy that's going on here, it was really developed by the Magnuson-Stevenson Act. The best hope I think that we have is that that's going to be reopened and that we have some very attentive federal legislators who are attending meetings in New Bedford, by the way, and listening to what's going on. So we've really got a good chance of changing things and start to peel back some of these overburdensome regulations on the fishing fleet.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Rice?
If I could comment on that as well. Actually, one of the people that is keystone on this is actually Senator Whitehouse in terms of taking a national lead on this. His wife Sandra actually worked with the state on our fisheries licensing issues and is getting involved with that in DC as well, is my understanding. The other opening, sort of from a political point of view, is that with the the death of Senator Stevens, who had been in the Senate until fairly recently, sort of since it was his legislation, he sort of rode herd on that, and that we don't have anymore. So there's a number of factors that are coming in that are making for change possible these days.
Thank you, Mike.
Any further questions or comments here at the table? Senator Sosnowski?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to just touch on a few things that we went over tonight, and obviously anything that we talked about as far as the mandates, the legislation that we put in last year after we received the council resolution, there was a list of issues. I had submitted the legislation last year. Obviously, it didn't go anywhere. I would say that if as closely as we can meet and work on these issues and get council resolutions to give us direction, and I just don't speak for myself, I speak for the whole delegation here. As far as the police and the fire and the workers' comp, the prejudgment interest issue, obviously you gave us a binding arbitration resolution last year. They were in opposition and we heeded that. I'm hopeful that we can have some type of joint study commission on the whole issue of binding arbitration. That's my hope this year. But all the issues that we brought up tonight, I, for one, and I'm not going to speak for the rest of the crew here, but I'm sure we all feel the same way. The more communication, the better. If more meetings are the answer for us to have work sessions with you folks to talk over these important issues prior to resolutions or to follow up at any time, I think that's a really good idea. Also on the public service corporation tax, Steve talked about a fair share issue in there. I know there have been changes on that, but the real estate values, the appraisals are down and so forth. So that issue too, we need a resolution on. On the poll closing issue, that's something we need a council resolution on. I do from the Senate. I had submitted that bill several years ago. It got passed out of committee. The House passed it, and it got passed out of committee. The Senate bill did. There was strong opposition to that in the Senate. The feeling is that they don't want to disenfranchise voters. A council resolution would be very helpful to me to bring that forward in the Senate. As far as the increasing the number of voters at polling places, I don't have any problem putting that forward. But all these things, a town council resolution carries a tremendous amount of weight on any of these issues. And it just helps me bring your word forward. And on the poll closing issue, if that's a very strong sentiment and the council feels very strongly about that, I'd even be happy to, at any time, I'd be happy to set up meetings with the leadership on any issues of any importance. And I extend that invitation not only to the council members, but also to Mr. Alfred and any of his staff at any time, any of these issues of importance. I'd be glad to help out any way I can. And also, I wanted to tell Jim that the farmers' vehicles are sales tax and property tax exempt. And we do listen to what farmers' needs are in the General Assembly. I can assure you of that, Mr. O'Neill. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Representative Lally?
Madam Chair, thank you. I just want to take an opportunity to thank you for this opportunity to bring all of your issues this early before we even start session. Many of these are the ones that we take on each year. A lot of them will have to do with the revenues that we have generate through the state. It seems like the DOT issues, you've got a fairly good handle on those town-wise. DEM, I think a lot of us were surprised at how hard DEM is coming down on the town on certain mandates, and I think we can have discussions with them, and I think, I know the amount of money the town put in on sewers on Narrow River, and I think a lot of the problems there are the waterfowl. I mean, I don't see where DEM's going to allow us to start to hunt the geese, so I think that maybe we should just take a look at a practical aspect of that. And CRMC, I'm in agreement, Steve. I think that we've got to do something over in Matunic, and maybe we can get to CRMC to be more proactive and involved rather than saying, well, we're regulatory and we really don't want that. I can tell you that CRMC helped out over in Narragansett 2 sessions ago with the Bonnet Shores Beach Club. That's a barrier beach, and they don't allow any sewers at barrier beaches. But where the sewers were in Bonnet Shores, they did allow a connection through legislation to go to Bonnet Shores because there were no lots that were going to be developed. It was tied in that we're not going to lose any funding. Bonnet Shores would not increase any units. We tied it up so tight that and it can't be used to extend it over to something like Green Hill, where many of the lots that are not developable would then be allowed to extend a sewer line there. But I did find that you can work with them, and I think, and I have mentioned to Grover Fugit, the problem that we have, what do you do with the people that are cut off if that road does go? And I think I agree with you on Potter's Pond. So maybe we can get CRMC to set aside the regulatory and just look at a practical solution. So I think those issues and a lot of the other ones, it's going to be an interesting session, and I look forward to working with the town council, and any of the resolutions you can give us to go forward, they do carry a lot of weight. and we can combine those resolutions with other cities and towns to show what support it has statewide. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to turn to Councilman Hagan McEntee, and then I will get to Representative Walsh.
I just wanted to, thank you, Ella. I just wanted to add on with Don, as to Matunic, I mean, I think we're practically in a state of emergency over there. If you do go down there and you visit the restaurants, I mean, it's constant. They're always worrying, and if we have another bad winter, I mean, I don't, you know, Steve's saying a year, I don't even know if we have that over there. What do you think, Steve? I mean, it could be a close...
If I could answer that, I wouldn't be here.
A bad winter could really make a difference, and I think we really need to get right on that and work with Coastal and DEM and see if we can come up with some kind of solution with the legislatures and find some funding, because that would be a travesty for that road to go out and for the businesses to go into the ocean along with the houses. I mean, and they really are like bailing out every day if you go over there. So I think we really need to get right on that.
Thank you. Representative Walsh?
I'd just like to say that, is this on? That all is not lost, that you probably can talk to DEM. We've had a lot of problems in Charleston, and what we found out with is that over the past year and a half, they have met with us, they have worked on plans with us, and if you keep pursuing it, you probably will get some resolution. As far as CRMC, I think a lot of you are more hopeful than I am on this, on their ability to act quickly. I mean, I wrote them a letter in August about Matunic, and it took 2 months to get even an answer, which was not even an answer. So to say I am too optimistic about CRMC at this point in time, I think if everyone brings some pressure on them, everyone, then maybe we can get some quicker action out of them. But I am concerned with their slowness.
Thank you. Further comments? Senator Sosnowski?
Thank you. I think probably CRMC, I'm not making any excuses for them by any means, but I think they've been very busy on their Ocean SAM plan for the wind project. And I think that's taken all the staff a great deal of time. If I may, Madam President, there were two things that were brought to my attention by some of our constituents, and if I could just bring them forward to you. One is from a resident on Queens River Drive, has a question about the infamous Dugway Bridge. I'd be glad to give you a copy of this letter, but she is concerned about the amount of money that's being spent, gas money. The buses can't go over the bridge because of the safety issue, and basically she wanted me to bring this letter to your attention, and wondering if anything can be done about that situation. And then the other person who contacted me was very concerned, and I have happened to mention this to our Mr. Murray, about bus shelters on Route 108. There's actually a group of people very concerned about, A, the lack of sidewalks on 108, and also the lack of shelters on such a busy route with apartments and so forth on 108. And also, this particular person was concerned about the new development right beside the public safety complex for South Shore Mental Health. She's very concerned that when that gets in place, there won't be enough cover for those people who are waiting for the buses, because obviously they're not going to be able to, a lot of them won't be able to drive. So those were two issues I just wanted to bring forward to you for your information.
Thank you. We appreciate that. I also have some correspondences from people that contacted me prior to this meeting, and they're not necessarily topics of agenda that I agree with, but I need to bring them forward as communication that people have contacted me. One of them is, will there be any new, and I know that you can't answer this, but will you be looking at any new legislation to deal with the motor vehicle excise tax? That came up tonight. I'm not requesting a response. And then also someone had contacted me looking for any kind of legislation with that straight party voting on the ballot. And there was the third person that expressed a concern about the educational funding formula in the mandates, that if indeed the educational funding formula does move forward, school districts that will end up losing money, how will they continue with the mandates from the Rhode Island Department of Education? So those questions were posed at me that I just brought to the table. There are no further questions here at the table. Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Ellen. We've forgotten about one major business here in South Kingstown. That's the University of Rhode Island. Latest request from the Board of Regents, they're asking for well over $30 million to try to avoid any further tuition increases. I can't imagine how the General Assembly is going to react. I don't know where you find $30 million, but I can certainly tell you that college is getting to be awfully expensive. I can tell you the backup secondary loans and equity loans to put a child through University of Rhode Island, it's incredible. I sell homes, and after the mortgage, you ought to see how they all fall into place. This is incredibly expensive. This university, as far as I know, 10 years ago, I think we were about 45% that the state provided in their operating income, and I think we're down the 15-18% range. But this, we need to wake up and understand that this is becoming so expensive that this could be a serious job loss over the next decade. And the higher education is where we go on to work and try to create jobs and businesses and new taxes and new lifestyles. That's where we ought to be spending our money. And if my memory is correct, I think we're down about $50 million in real dollars over the last 10 years to the three colleges. That's appalling. I don't know what else to call it. That is, it's terrible. And just a couple more things, so I won't have to come back. That's going to haunt us this year. You guys are going to have to look over your shoulder, too, because Massachusetts, we bought a year, but you know they're going to have at least 3 casinos and maybe 1 slot parlor coming in. By any study that I have seen, we're looking at least 40 to 50% of our $250, $300 million of revenue that could be affected if they go into that business. This is serious, and even if they're a couple of years out, you've got to put this into your, no more than your radar screen. You've got to plan on this happening with your budget presentations and activity up at the State House. I don't know if you've noticed yet, but I don't believe Congress has yet to fund the current year for federal heating assistance. Some of the states that have inquired are looking to be down 50%. That could be another $10, $15 million a state needs for heating assistance for the poor. These are incredible things, and you've got to set this aside because these are people that you need to help. So you've got to take from those that have it, and you've got to really plan your budgets around those that can't do anything for themselves. And the last question that I have is, and I certainly need a lesson on this, but a few years ago, both myself and the council, we requested the state that South Kingstown and a certain district here be included in the arts district, the 7% tax exemption that 9 cities and towns have throughout Rhode Island. We were too late. The budget deficits were just overwhelming, and I guess it either didn't come up for a vote or didn't pass, but anyway, there we are. So we're without that, yet 9 cities and towns have that. Middletown, Portsmouth, Newport, and Aquidneck Island have incredible benefits from the luxury tax exemption that area of the state gets. Newport Grand, Highlight up in Lincoln, those towns get a lot of payout and some coverage for their officers, for the fire departments, but also get a payout, certain percentage payout. We have our natural area down here of South Kingstown, which are restaurants and our beaches and our hotels. I would like to see a doubling of our return on the meals tax, currently 1%. I don't want to add 1% to the cost. I want 1% of the remaining 7% that the state gets, and I'd like to double our hotel take. That would be probably, if Steve could correct me, that'd probably be around $650,000 that could come back to South Kingstown. But right now, I'm looking at other areas of the state with tremendous revenue advantages that have helped their citizens. And here we are battling to keep our beaches and our roads open, everything else, and we get nothing from you. Absolutely nothing. We pay in so much money from personal income, sales taxes, everything else that we do, and our return is so small, as Steve discussed tonight, whether it's state aid to municipalities, education. The reward for this town is nothing. Maybe we should secede and go on our own. That's how little money we're getting back from the state. And our biggest employer, or one of our top ones, the University of Rhode Island, I mean, all you guys, all your offices have been in place, and this place is almost comatose. How about our hospital down here? You need to fight for us, and you haven't done it.
Excuse me.
Thank you.
Okay, any more?
If I may.
Senator Sosnowski.
I won't address everything that Jim had to say, but again, on the Arts District, we did try it. I think it passed one chamber or the other. Give us a resolution, we'll try it again. As far as South County Hospital, we have helped them. This past year, Rhode Island Health and Education Building Corporation, which is a quasi-state agency, assisted South County Hospital with restructuring their old debt. And prior to the restructuring, the hospital was paying an interest rate of approximately 15%, and they're now paying a rate that is less than 4%, which has helped to ensure the financial, fiscal stability of that hospital. Now, we don't do everything, but we're doing what we can in this fiscal environment. Jim, can I ask, through the chair, were you saying about, you were talking about Massachusetts casinos. Were you saying that we should have more casinos in Rhode Island? I didn't really understand where you were coming from. And also your quote, we should be taking from those who have it. I don't know what you mean by that either. If you could just explain what you meant on those 2 points?
The casino issue, it has been estimated that we will lose at least $100 million to $150 million of revenues. We currently get roughly in the area of $300 million if those 3 parlors and 1 slot go into Massachusetts. That's been the estimate. It's been done by this professor, I think, at SMU that goes by license plates at all these facilities.
Dartmouth?
Yep, thank you. And everyone seems to believe that he's quite accurate. So obviously every state now is moving forward. This Maine just narrowly passed their new Casino Act, and I don't know where New Hampshire is, but everyone's going to be in this battle. If you follow New Jersey, you'll see now that this is a disaster for Atlantic City. Bond defaults, huge unemployment with the casinos down there. Now this is because every state is now going in this business. What I'm saying is you have to start putting this into our budget plans, the potential loss of $100 to $150 million. And to go back to those that have it in this state, I said earlier that we've got to address the pension issue in this state. That's what we have to address.
Wasn't clear on which.
Yeah, that's what we have to address. And Steve was right. We need to also get out of the contracts. We need to take the health care issue out of the contracts. It has to get back to management rights and localities. So thank you for your questions.
Thank you for clarifying that for me, Jim. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'm going to open any comments or questions from the floor, the audience. Seeing none, my apologies.
I was patiently waiting to see if anybody else was going to get up. I'm Keith Forehaven. I live right over here on High Street. I have something to add to the conversation. I'm not sure if it's anyone's jurisdiction, but Race to the Top hasn't come up yet. And I'm concerned for South Kingston in that I don't know that Race to the Top is going to be of that much advantage to us. And it seems like it's a good policy for a school system that is in need of assistance, but for a school system like ours that's really facing mostly budgetary issues, it doesn't seem like it's going to help us out at all. And if anybody has an opinion on that, I'd love to hear it. If you're not aware of Race to the Top and what it's going to do to our school system, I'd like you to talk to Gist and make yourself aware of that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any further comments from the audience? Well, at this time, I would just like to state again, thank you. We have listened. We look forward to a really close working relationship, especially in this economic difficult time. We appreciate the support in anything that you can do with a better working relationship and being proactive with DEM and Coastal Research Management Council would be greatly appreciated. But we are all working together, and you will definitely see more resolutions at this table to support your work up at the General Assembly. So, in closing, I just want to thank Steve again and Alan for the packet that he put together. I think we're all in agreement that it outlined in extensive detail and elaboration on each issue on the agenda tonight. And I want to thank everyone for making themselves available. We plan on having many, many more meetings, and we probably will not see you before the holiday, so happy holidays to all. And thank Representative Rice for his service, as well as Representative Caprio, and welcome. I believe the swearing-in is in January. Representative-elect Tansey at this point, and Representative-elect Dickinson. Any other further topics on the agenda? Okay, happy holidays to all. Thank you. Meeting's